You've entered the story they tried to bury. What you hear next was never meant to be found. This is Grim Whisper Studios. The desert wind blew slow and dry, like breath from a dying god. In the middle of nowhere, surrounded by endless dunes, stood a forgotten temple. Half sunk, its spire crooked like a broken finger, pointing to the cursed sky. James, a documentary filmmaker from Boston, wiped sweat from his brow as he stared at the structure. He wasn't here for history, he was here for legend. Locals had warned him, tales of Rak, the ash spirit. They said the temple once belonged to a forgotten cult that practiced Kala Jadoo, black magic so old even the gods refused to touch it. James didn't believe in spirits. He believed in stories that sold. So he ignored the ash trail by the entrance and stepped inside. The air shifted, warm outside but freezing within. His flashlight flickered. Footsteps, not his own. He turned sharply, empty, but faintly, beneath the layers of silence, he heard it, whispers, in a language not meant for the living. He pressed record. Suddenly the lens cracked. From inside, the whispers stopped, and the ash trail was now behind him, a thin line of gray leading further into the darkness. James moved deeper into the temple, following the ash like a man sleepwalking into a nightmare. The red markings on the stone floor pulsed faintly, like veins beneath dying skin. Symbols, circles, ancient text. Every instinct screamed to turn back, but something pulled him forward. Then, movement, a flicker of shadow, not his own. He turned slowly. A figure stood near the inner sanctum, hooded, silent, unmoving. The torchlight barely touched it, but one detail stood out like blood in snow. Its eyes. They weren't eyes. They were clay, rough, cracked, sculpted by hand, and yet blinking slowly, like something remembering how to be alive. James stepped back. Dust scattered. The figure did not chase. Instead, it raised a hand. 5 fingers, burnt at the tips. It pointed, not at him, but at the wall behind. James turned, and there, etched into the stone in blood and ash, was his own name. James Carter, written centuries before he was born. A guttural voice echoed from nowhere. He is chosen. The air exploded with whispers, thousands of them, some begging, some laughing. James ran, heart pounding. He turned a corner and slammed into a rotting wooden door. It creaked open. Inside, an altar, chains, bones, ash floating midair. And in the center, a photo of him, taken today. He hadn't taken any selfies. The whisper returned, closer now, in perfect English. You were always meant to come. James stared at the photograph. Same shirt, same camera hanging around his neck. But the background wasn't desert. It was this very room, seen from above, like someone or something had taken it before he even arrived. He backed away, heart hammering, but the door behind him had vanished. Not closed, not hidden. Gone, replaced by stone wall. He was trapped. The room dimmed. Not the light. The air itself seemed to darken. A rustle echoed from the ceiling. Fine gray ash began to fall like snow. James coughed, wiping it off his face. But where it touched his skin, it left symbols. Burned in, painless, but pulsing faintly red. From the shadows, a voice, female this time, low and broken. We remember your blood. The floor beneath the altar cracked open with a deep groan. Chains began to rattle on their own. Then, movement again. Not the hooded figure. Someone smaller. A child, maybe 8 or 9, stepped out from the opening. Skin pale like ash. Eyes completely black. She looked up at James and whispered, "My name was Anya. He burned us for power." He tried to ask her who he was, but his voice caught in his throat. Dry, ash-choked. Anya looked at the photograph in his hand. That's not from today. That's from the last time you came. James froze. You forget, but the temple doesn't. Suddenly, the ash on the ground moved. Not with wind, but with intention. It slithered toward James, forming a circle around his feet. A ritual circle. He dropped the photo. The girl's voice was almost a whisper. He comes when the circle closes. Behind James, the hooded figure began to chant. The walls bled ash, and a single drumbeat echoed from the deep. Boom, boom, boom. The drumbeat grew louder. Not mechanical, organic, like a massive heart pumping beneath the temple. Boom, boom, boom. The ash circle ignited in a dull red glow. James tried to leap out, but the air around it felt like thick glass, trapping him in place. The hooded figure stepped forward, slowly, deliberately. Its mouth opened, not to speak, but to unhinge, like a snake. Inside, instead of a tongue, there was a mass of writhing black threads, each whispering in different voices. Male, female, infant, old, as if it carried the souls of everyone it had consumed. James screamed, but no sound escaped. The clay-eyed figure reached into its robes and pulled out a fistful of ash. It whispered, "Let the memory return." Then it blew the ash into James's face. In a flash, everything changed. The room around him melted into a memory, not his own. He was no longer James Carter. He was Devraj, a powerful tantric from 700 years ago, standing at the same altar, dressed in black, surrounded by chained victims. He was chanting. He was burning children. Anya was one of them. He was the monster. James fell to his knees, gasping as the vision ended. The hooded figure leaned close, eyes inches from his. Clay cracked at the edges. It spoke in the ancient dialect, but James understood every word. "You made this circle. You opened the gate. We only waited for you to return." Suddenly, the child, Anya, stepped forward and touched the ash markings on James's arm. They flared up like fire. He screamed, voice finally returning. The hooded figure raised both hands. Chains hanging from the ceiling snapped loose and slithered across the floor like snakes, wrapping around James's legs, dragging him toward the altar. The photo on the floor blackened and turned to dust. Boom! Boom! The chanting returned, and the black tongue began to sing. James thrashed, trying to fight the chains pulling him toward the altar, but they moved like they had minds of their own. Cold, alive, ancient. The stone beneath him vibrated with the chants echoing from every direction, now in hundreds of voices, including his own. Rakshana, Rakshana, Devata, Rakshana. The language was ancient Sanskrit, but James, or Devraj, the soul inside him, understood every syllable. Protect the gate. Feed the guardian. Anya stood still, watching. Tears of ash streamed down her pale cheeks. "You offered us, Devraj, one by one, burned our names into this stone. Now it's your turn." The hooded figure raised a ceremonial dagger, its blade carved from black bone, slick with age. It didn't move to kill James. Instead, it handed him the blade. James's hands, now trembling, lifted it without command. Something in his blood remembered the rhythm, the ritual, the chant. He was becoming himself again, or rather, the self he had been 700 years ago. A struggle ignited inside him. James tried to drop the blade. It wouldn't fall. Tried to look away. His eyes wouldn't close. The hooded figure extended its arms, and behind it, rising from the ash like a monster from a nightmare, emerged a towering shape, formless but burning from within, made of smoke, bone, and black fire. The gate guardian. It had no face, just dozens of mouths, each whispering names. His victims. One mouth open. "Choose!" A circle of ash drew itself around Anya, and another around James. 2 offerings. Only one needed. The guardian would take one and set the other free. The dagger grew heavier in James's hand. Anya spoke softly. "This is why you came back. To remember. To choose what you never chose before." James closed his eyes. The chanting stopped. The air fell silent. He raised the dagger and pointed it at himself. "I won't do it again." The temple roared. Ash exploded upward like a volcanic wind. And the last thing James saw was the guardian's mouth smiling. Then darkness. Silence, not peace, not relief. Just silence, like the moment after a scream when the world forgets to breathe. James opened his eyes. He was lying outside the temple, alone, flat on the sand. The sun was rising, pale and cold, casting long shadows behind the dunes. His clothes were covered in ash, his hands empty. No dagger, no chains, no Anya. He sat up slowly. The temple behind him looked smaller now, lifeless, as if it had never opened, as if none of it had happened, except it had. Carved into his forearm, barely visible but burned into the skin, were the same ritual symbols. He heard something, faint behind him. Turning around, he saw a child, a girl, Anya. She stood a few feet away, unharmed, no longer ghostly, no longer pale. She smiled. "You remembered," she whispered. James stood, confused, broken. Anya pointed to the horizon, to the road that led out of the desert. "You can go now, but you'll never forget again." And just like that, she was gone. No footsteps, no wind, only a single line of ash, trailing from where she stood to where James stood. He followed it with his eyes and realized it ended at his boots. It wasn't just marking a path, it was marking him. He wasn't cursed. He was the curse now, walking memory of the crimes, the rituals, the black tongue that once sang in the name of power. And somewhere deep beneath the temple, the guardian slept again, waiting, not for blood, but for the next Devraj to return. Because ashes don't blow away in the wind. Ashes remember,